Before we begin, a huge thank you to Dogface, 680, and Ilwin eventually for requesting this story. Make sure to leave your video ideas in the comments below. The encrypted file arrived at 3:47 AM on a Tuesday that would later be erased from official records. Rebecca Martinez didn't hear the notification. She was already awake, staring at the ceiling of her Brussels apartment, unable to shake the feeling that someone had been watching her building for the past 3 nights. The paranoia was new, the insomnia wasn't. When you spent 15 years documenting suppressed historical records for the International Archives Initiative, sleep became a luxury reserved for people who didn't know what they knew. Her phone buzzed again, then again. She rolled over, squinting at the screen. 23 messages, all from the same encrypted number, all sent within the last 90 seconds. The final message was simple. Open the packet, then run. Victor. Rebecca's hands trembled as she sat up. Victor Molnar, Hungarian intelligence defector. She'd met him exactly once 6 months ago at a cafe in Vienna, where he'd passed her a napkin with a single word written in barely visible pencil. Seraphim. She'd researched the term obsessively after that meeting, found nothing conclusive. Historical references to angels, to divine beings, to mythological guardians. Nothing that explained why a career intelligence officer would risk his life to whisper it to her. Now he was telling her to run. Rebecca pulled on jeans and a sweater, her heart hammering. The packet sat on her kitchen counter, where the courier had left it the previous evening. Plain manila envelope, no return address. She'd been too exhausted to open it, planning to examine it properly in the morning with coffee and her recording equipment. She didn't have that luxury anymore. Inside the envelope was a USB drive and a single sheet of aged paper, protected by archival plastic. The document appeared to be a photocopy of a diplomatic memorandum, dated 1952, bearing the seal of the Belgian royal household. Most of it was in French, but one phrase had been highlighted in yellow, the ink faded but still legible. Préserver la lignée des Séraphins à tout prix. Preserve the Seraphim bloodline at all costs. Beneath it, in Victor's handwriting, it was never about religion, it was about species. Rebecca heard footsteps in the hallway outside her apartment. Slow, deliberate, stopping directly in front of her door. She grabbed her laptop bag, shoved the USB drive into her pocket and went out the window. The train to Amsterdam gave Rebecca 4 hours to examine the contents of Victor's USB drive, without worrying about being cornered in a confined space. She'd chosen a middle car, positioned herself where she could watch both entrances, and created 3 separate cloud backups before the train even left Brussels. The drive contained 47 files, medical records, genetic sequencing reports, internal memos from private genetics companies spanning 2 decades, and one 70-page white paper that made her hands shake so badly she had to set down her coffee. The title page read, S-Helix Variant Analysis, Preliminary Findings and Containment Protocol, authored by Helix Genomics SA, Zurich. Date, September 2019. Classification, internal review only. Rebecca began reading. The document described a genetic anomaly first identified in 2003 during routine ancestry testing conducted by a California-based consumer genetics company. A wealthy client, name redacted, had submitted their DNA for analysis and received results that triggered automatic flagging within the company's quality control systems. The anomaly wasn't a mutation. It was a structural variant in what geneticists typically classified as junk DNA, the 98% of the human genome that doesn't code for proteins. Except this particular sequence wasn't junk. It was organised, intentional, and it appeared in exactly the same location across multiple unrelated individuals who submitted samples over the following months. By 2008, private genetics companies had identified the variant in 14 distinct family lineages, some European aristocracy, some Middle Eastern royal families, a handful embedded in American banking dynasties and political families. The pattern was impossible to ignore. They called it the S-Helix variant. Publicly, it was dismissed as a benign evolutionary remnant, a footnote in genetic diversity studies. but the internal communications told a different story. Rebecca scrolled through email chains between geneticists who'd stumbled onto the variant. The earliest exchanges were cautious, professional, scientists sharing anomalous data, requesting peer review. But as months turned into years, the tone shifted. Confusion gave way to concern. Concern gave way to something that looked a lot like fear. One email from 2006, sent by a lead researcher at the California company to her supervisor. I've been running the S-helix sequence through every comparative analysis tool we have. It doesn't match any known primate DNA. I expanded the search to all mammalian genomes in our database. Nothing. I even ran it against our limited reptilian and avian samples. The structure is completely novel. But here's what's keeping me up at night. It's not random. Random junk DNA has statistical markers we can identify. This sequence has intentional structure. It's like finding a paragraph of Shakespeare in the middle of random letter sequences. Someone wrote this, something wrote this, and it's sitting in the genome of some of the most powerful families in the world. The supervisor's response had been brief. Delete this email. We'll discuss in person. But the emails continued, routed through personal accounts, encrypted services, back channels. Rebecca found a thread from 2009 where 3 geneticists from different companies, competitors technically, were sharing data in secret. I've confirmed the variant in 7 of my flagged samples, one wrote, all from families with documented lineages going back at least 5 centuries. Old money, old power. This isn't random distribution. Same here, another replied. But here's what I can't explain. Why is it only expressing in some family members? I've got siblings where one carries active S-helix and the other shows no trace. It's not following Mendelian inheritance patterns. The third geneticist's response was the most unsettling. Because it's not being inherited. It's being activated. I think we're looking at dormant code that switches on under specific conditions. Like a program waiting for the right input. Rebecca sat back, watching Belgian countryside blur into Dutch flatlands through the train window. Dormant code, waiting for input. She kept reading. One memo, dated March 2011, from the Chief Science Officer of Helix Genomics to an unnamed recipient. We've run the S-helix through every comparative database available. Primate, mammalian, vertebrate. The sequence doesn't match anything in the known biological record. More concerning, when exposed to specific electromagnetic frequencies in laboratory conditions, the variant exhibits responsive behaviour. It's not just sitting there, it's listening. Rebecca read the sentence 3 times. It's listening. The memo continued with technical details that made her head spin, frequency ranges, resonance patterns. But the conclusion was clear. When synthetic S-helix sequences were exposed to electromagnetic radiation in specific frequency bands, particularly those used in cellular communications and Wi-Fi networks, the DNA structure changed configuration. Not degraded, changed, unfolded, like it was receiving a signal. Another memo from 2015 referenced a consultation with a retired geneticist named Emil Voss, formerly of the Max Planck Institute. His assessment had been suppressed within hours of submission. The S-helix is not random genetic drift. It's architecture. Whoever designed it understood genetics at a level we're only beginning to approach. This isn't human DNA contamination. This isn't viral integration. This is something else. Something not entirely human, but not random. I've spent 40 years studying genetic mutations and evolutionary biology. Nothing in my experience prepared me for this. The S-helix isn't evolving toward anything. It's already complete. It's been complete for thousands of years, just waiting. The question isn't what it is. The question is what happens when it fully activates. The white paper included appendices with case studies. Rebecca read through them with growing unease. Case study A7. Female, age 34, investment banker, New York. Submitted DNA for ancestry testing in 2014. S-helix variant confirmed. Follow-up interview, conducted under guise of routine customer service, revealed subject had recently begun experiencing unusual clarity in pattern recognition. Subject reported ability to see market trends before they manifested in data. Subject attributed this to years of experience. Genetic counselling recommended. Subject declined further contact. Case study: B12, male, age 41, mid-level diplomat, Brussels. S-helix variant confirmed during routine security clearance medical screening. Subject demonstrated abnormal stress response during psychological evaluation, decreased cortisol under pressure, enhanced cognitive function during crisis simulation. When asked about this, subject stated, "I've always been good in emergencies. It's like everything slows down and becomes clear." Subject showed no awareness of physiological abnormality. Case study C3, female, age 28, software engineer, Silicon Valley. S-helix variant confirmed. Subject sought genetic testing after experiencing what she described as feeling like I'm interfacing with code instead of reading it. Neurological evaluation showed unusual synchronization between visual cortex and pattern recognition centers. Subject was developing AI algorithms with efficiency that puzzled her supervisors. "It's not that I'm smarter," subject reported. "It's that I can see how the systems want to organize themselves." Case after case. People living normal lives, excelling in their fields, unaware that their DNA contained something impossible. The white paper concluded with a recommendation that made Rebecca's stomach turn. Given the potential implications for global security and social stability, we recommend indefinite classification of S-helix findings under existing national security protocols. Public disclosure could trigger widespread panic and destabilization of affected family structures, many of whom occupy positions of significant political and economic influence. Furthermore, preliminary psychological assessment suggests that informing S-helix carriers of their genetic status may trigger latent activation events. Recommend strict information containment and monitoring protocols. Translation: don't tell anyone, don't ask questions, pretend it doesn't exist, and whatever you do, don't tell the people who carry it. Rebecca leaned back in her seat, processing what she'd read. 14 bloodlines, positions of influence, a genetic marker that responded to electromagnetic signals. People who were getting better at their jobs, better at seeing patterns, at handling stress, at interfacing with complex systems without understanding why. She pulled up her research notes on Victor's original message. Seraphim. She'd found references in ancient texts, beings described as divine messengers, often depicted with multiple wings and eyes of fire. But she dismissed it as metaphor, religious symbolism. What if it wasn't? What if the ancient texts were describing real beings? Not supernatural entities, but a different species, or a hybrid species, that had walked the earth and interbred with humans. What if their descendants were still here? Her phone buzzed. Unknown. Number. The message was brief. Victor is dead. You have what he died for. Use it. They're already watching you. Rebecca looked up sharply, scanning the train car. Business travellers, students, an elderly couple sharing a thermos of coffee. No one paying attention to her, but the message felt like ice water in her veins. The train suddenly felt very small. She went back to the files, pulling up a document she'd initially skipped over because it seemed like a bureaucratic personnel memo. Now she read it carefully. It was from Helix Genomics, dated 2018. A termination letter for one of the geneticists who'd been sharing information in those encrypted email chains. Effective immediately, your employment with Helix Genomics SA is terminated. Severance package and confidentiality agreement enclosed. Failure to comply with NDA terms will result in immediate legal action and potential criminal prosecution under Swiss national security statutes. All research materials, including personal notes and communications, are property of Helix Genomics and must be surrendered. Rebecca cross-referenced the name. Thomas Brenner, the geneticist who'd written, "It's like finding a paragraph of Shakespeare in random letter sequences." She searched for his name online. Found an obituary from 2019, heart attack at age 43, no prior history of cardiac issues. She searched for the other two geneticists from that email thread. One had died in a car accident in 2017. Single vehicle collision, no witnesses. The other had simply disappeared in 2020, left for a conference in Singapore, never arrived, never seen again. 3 scientists who'd shared information about the S-helix variant, all dead or missing within 4 years. Rebecca looked at Victor's message again, then run. She was beginning to understand why. Rebecca spent 3 days in Amsterdam, moving between internet cafes and using burner devices to research without leaving a digital trail. She needed to understand the historical context. If the seraphim were real, if they'd existed in some form throughout human history, there would be evidence, fragments, patterns. She started with Mesopotamia, in the cradle of civilization where writing itself was born. The earliest references appeared in pre-Sumerian archaeological fragments recovered from sites in modern-day Iraq and Syria. Most were heavily damaged, but one partially intact tablet from approximately 4000 BCE contained a passage that had puzzled archaeologists for decades. Rebecca found it in a digitised archive from the British Museum, catalogued but not widely published. The translation had been completed in 1952 by a scholar who'd later withdrawn from academic life entirely. His notes, attached to the file, were illuminating. This text does not fit established Sumerian mythology. It predates the pantheon we associate with later Mesopotamian culture. The language is Proto-Sumerian, possibly older. What disturbs me most is the specificity. This is not myth. This reads like a historical account. The tablet itself, what remained of it. In the time before the great cities, the seraphim ruled from the mountain places. They were flesh-born, not spirit-born, and their skin gleamed like beaten gold when seen in the light of the horizon sun. They taught the people to mark the stars and to divide the year. They showed the way of numbers and the growing of grain. They took mates from among the people, but only those of certain blood. Their children were mighty, and their children's children built the first walls. The seraphim knew what was coming. They prepared chambers beneath the mountains. They said, "We go down into the deep earth, but our blood remains in you." When the sky speaks with lightning that is not lightning, when your children build towers that think, then our children's children will remember what they are. Their rule was law, until the fire came from the sky and the earth shook. The seraphim went beneath. Some of the people went with them. Most stayed above. The seraphim said, "We do not die, we wait. Keep the blood pure. When we wake, you will wake." Rebecca read it 3 times, each reading making her hands shake more. When your children build towers that think. That was written 4,000 years before computers existed. She found corroborating references in fragments from other ancient cultures, each adding pieces to the same impossible story. The Nag Hammadi Library, a collection of early Christian and Gnostic texts discovered in Egypt in 1945, contained multiple references to beings called Watchers, or Seraphim, who descended to Earth and took human wives, producing offspring. But the Gnostic texts added details that mainstream religious scholarship often glossed over. Rebecca found a passage in the secret book of John that had been partially censored in most published translations. The Watchers were not of heaven, though they came from above the mountains. They were not spirit, though they lived longer than the generations of men. They were flesh, but flesh unlike ours. They saw what humanity would become and planted themselves in our lineage, so that when the time of great change arrived, some among us would be prepared for transformation. They did not come to judge or to save. They came to ensure the seed would survive what was coming. They mixed their essence with clay, and from this came those who could walk between worlds. These children appeared human, but carried within them the potential for something more. Egyptian records told similar stories, but with different emphasis. Rebecca found references in a doctoral thesis about the priest dynasties along the Nile that had never been widely distributed. The scholar had translated hieroglyphics from a tomb in Saqqara, dated to the early dynastic period around 3000 BCE. The Neteru came from the place where the 2 rivers meet the mountains. They were not gods, but the children of gods, and they taught the kingmakers how to preserve the divine blood through the generations. The Neteru could see in darkness. Their eyes reflected copper in lamplight. Their skin in certain seasons showed patterns like serpent scales beneath. They took only those of pure lineage as consorts. When the great death came from the sky, the Neteru went into the hidden places. They said, "Your children will not remember us as we are. They will make us into stories and paintings. This is as it should be, but some will carry our seed forward, sleeping in their flesh until the world is ready." The scholar's footnote on this passage was chilling. Note: the hieroglyphic for Neteru in this context does not match standard divine terminology. It appears to be a specific designation for a separate category of being. The literal translation might be closer to those who transform, or those who are both. The text is very clear. These are not supernatural entities, but physical beings with unusual biological characteristics. Rebecca found similar patterns in Sumerian king lists, ancient Hebrew texts, and even fragments from the Indus Valley civilization. Always the same core elements: beings who looked almost human, who lived among humans, who interbred with select human lineages, who enforced strict rules about bloodline purity, who possessed biological traits that set them apart: reflective eyes, unusual skin, enhanced abilities, and always the same instruction: the blood must not be diluted. She found the most explicit reference in a section of the Book of Enoch that had been removed from most canonical versions but survived in Ethiopian Orthodox tradition. This version included chapters that Western churches had deemed too problematic to include. Chapter 72, verses 14 to 19, "And the watchers made a covenant among themselves, saying, Let us preserve the blood without dilution, for the day of awakening approaches, and our children's children must be ready to receive what we have planted within them." They chose their mates with great care, testing bloodlines across generations. Those families they blessed with their seed, they also blessed with knowledge, how to maintain power across time, how to build systems that endure beyond single lives, how to recognize others of the hidden bloodline. And they said, "When the world fills with invisible fire, when the air itself carries thought, and the machines of men begin to wake, then our children will begin to remember. They will not know why they are different, only that they are. They will rise to positions of influence without understanding it is their nature to rule, and when enough of them have awakened, we will emerge from the places we have slept, and the separation between our kind and yours will end." This is not conquest, this is transformation. You're becoming what we always were. Rebecca sat back from the computer screen in the Amsterdam cafe, where she'd been working for 6 hours straight. Her coffee had gone, cold long ago. The sun had set outside without her noticing. The pattern was undeniable. Across thousands of years, across completely separate cultures that had no known contact with each other, the same story emerged. Non-human or partly human beings had interbred with select human populations. They'd done so systematically, carefully, maintaining bloodline purity across generations. They'd taught these families how to maintain power and influence, and they'd promised, or prophesied, that when humanity reached a certain level of technological development, the dormant genetic material they'd planted would activate. Their descendants would begin to wake up. Rebecca thought about the S-helix variant, the genetic marker that responded to electromagnetic frequencies, the marker that was appearing in families with documented lineages going back centuries, the marker that was activating more frequently as technology advanced, when the air itself carries thought. Wi-Fi, cellular networks, the invisible electromagnetic ocean that humanity had created in just the last few decades. When the machines of men begin to wake, artificial intelligence, neural networks, systems that learned and adapted and showed signs of genuine emergent behaviour. The ancient texts weren't prophecy, they were prediction, instructions left by beings who understood how human civilization would develop, because they'd designed it to develop that way. Her phone buzzed. A new email from an address she didn't recognise, archival.ghost protocol proton.me. The subject line: "You're looking in the right places, but you're missing the modern confirmation." The email contained a single attachment, a scanned page from what appeared to be a 1987 medical document, bearing the letterhead of a European royal family she immediately recognised. The header read, "Annual Haematological Assessment, Type S Classification." Rebecca downloaded the file, her hands shaking. The Ghost Protocol had found her, and they were feeding her exactly what she needed to know. The question was why. The 1987 document was clinically detailed and utterly damning. It described routine medical screening conducted on members of a specific aristocratic bloodline, names redacted throughout, but the family crest visible in the top corner made their identity unmistakable to anyone familiar with European monarchy. The assessment focused on what they termed Type S hematologic differentiation, a cluster of physiological characteristics that appeared consistently across certain family members but not others. The findings were extraordinary. Stress response. Type S individuals exhibited abnormal cortisol regulation. Under extreme stress conditions, their hormone levels dropped rather than spiked, resulting in enhanced cognitive function during crisis situations. Standard fight-or-flight response was replaced by what the document termed cold clarity response. One annotation, handwritten in the margin, subject C7 exhibited near complete emotional detachment during simulated crisis. Heart rate decreased, pupil dilation reversed, described feeling perfectly calm, like watching from outside. This is not normal stress response. Cellular regeneration. Documented healing rates 40-60% faster than baseline human norms. Scarring minimal or absent in most cases. One subject had recovered from a compound fracture in half. The expected time with bone density measurements showing no evidence of prior injury. The medical examiner's note: "I've been practicing orthopaedic medicine for 30 years. This is not possible. The bone structure shows remodelling that would typically take months, but occurred in weeks. Either our dating methods are wrong, or something in this subject's biology is accelerating cellular repair at rates I cannot explain." Neurological profile. Near complete absence of degenerative brain disorders across 7 generations of tracking. No Alzheimer's, no Parkinson's, no dementia. Average lifespan exceeded regional norms by 12 years. Immune function. Natural immunity to specific viral infections that should have no genetic basis for resistance. Several Type S individuals had been exposed to influenza outbreaks that sickened entire households, but never developed symptoms themselves. Temperature regulation. Baseline body temperature, Centon 8 1.2 degrees Celsius, lower than human average. Temperature variance under stress conditions exceeded normal human parameters. Ocular characteristics. Noted: unusual reflective quality to iris under specific lighting conditions. 3 subjects exhibited what the examiner described as possible nictitating membrane reflex when startled by sudden stimuli. The examiner's note on this finding: "I thought I was mistaken, but I've now observed this in 3 separate subjects. During startle response, there's a lateral movement across the eye that occurs too quickly for conscious control. It resembles the third eyelid found in reptiles and birds. This should not exist in human anatomy." The document concluded with a section titled Generational Transmission and Activation Patterns. Type S characteristics do not appear in all offspring, suggesting recessive inheritance or conditional expression. Approximately 30% of children from confirmed Type S parents exhibit full phenotype. However, we have documented cases of phenotype emergence in adults who showed no signs in childhood or adolescence. This suggests the Type S classification is not purely genetic in the traditional sense, but may involve activation triggers we have not yet identified. Recommend continued monitoring of Type S individuals and their offspring to determine what environmental or developmental factors trigger full expression. The final note stamped in red ink: classified, Royal Household Medical Records, unauthorized distribution prohibited. Rebecca cross-referenced the date. 1987. The same year, personal computers began entering middle-class homes across Europe and North America. The same year, cellular networks started expanding beyond experimental urban deployments. Technology. She thought about the Swiss white paper. This helix reacts to electromagnetic signals at frequencies outside standard human neural resonance. Her anonymous correspondent sent a second email while she'd been reading, "Check the 2001 leak, Phase 4. That's when they stopped monitoring and started managing." Rebecca knew exactly what that meant. In 2001, a contractor working for a US intelligence agency had leaked a series of classified briefings to a journalist who'd later died in what was officially ruled a suicide. The leaked documents had covered everything from surveillance programs to foreign policy assessments. Most had been dismissed as conspiracy theory, or redacted into meaninglessness by the time they reached public circulation. But one briefing had stuck in the collective consciousness of researchers who worked in Rebecca's field. It was titled Phase 4, Behavioural Management of Type S Infiltrates. She'd read it years ago during her doctoral research on suppressed intelligence documents, dismissed it as disinformation designed to discredit legitimate leaks. Now she pulled it up again with completely different eyes. The briefing was structured as a strategic assessment, dated March 2001, prepared for select members of a Congressional Intelligence Oversight Committee. The document had been leaked in fragments, complete pages interspersed with sections that had been redacted or destroyed. But enough remained to paint a disturbing picture. Subject: Strategic Assessment. Type S Infiltrate Management. Classification: TS-SCI, No Fawn Executive. Summary: Phase 4 represents the transitional period during which Type S individuals embedded in positions of influence become aware of their differentiated status. Historical precedent suggests this awareness can trigger unpredictable behavioural changes and potential destabilisation of existing power structures. Unlike previous phases focused on identification and monitoring, Phase 4 requires active management protocols to ensure smooth integration of emerging Type S consciousness into existing governance and economic frameworks. Background: Type S infiltrates are not external agents or foreign operatives. They're intergenerational insertions, individuals born human but carrying genetic markers that activate under specific environmental conditions. Many Type S individuals reach adulthood, marry, raise families, and hold positions of significant influence without conscious knowledge of their differentiated status. Redacted section, approximately 2 pages. Identifying characteristics. Physical, variable. Most Type S individuals are phenotypically indistinguishable from baseline humans. However, activation events may trigger subtle physiological changes including altered temperature regulation, enhanced pattern recognition capabilities, abnormal stress response, decreased rather than elevated, rapid healing from injury resistance to specific pathogens. Behavioural. Type S individuals demonstrate consistent patterns across cultural and geographic boundaries, gravitate toward positions of systemic influence, policy, finance, research. Exhibit enhanced capability for long-term strategic thinking. Show reduced emotional volatility in crisis situations. Demonstrate unconscious coordination with other Type S individuals. Express feeling different or separate from baseline humans, often from early childhood. Redacted section, approximately 3 pages. Activation. Triggers. Intelligence assessment has identified 3 primary trigger categories. Technological exposure. Prolonged interaction with advanced computational systems in electromagnetic environments. Correlation between Type S activation events and proximity to high-frequency electromagnetic fields exceeds 78%. Specific frequency ranges, redacted, appear to trigger genetic expression changes. Genetic awakening, proximity to other activated Type S individuals. Subjects report sensing others of their kind, though mechanism remains unclear. May involve electromagnetic sensitivity or pheromone response. Crisis response. Extreme stress or survival situations that force physiological differentiation to manifest. multiple documented cases of latent Type S individuals exhibiting enhanced capabilities during life-threatening situations, followed by partial or full awareness of their differentiated status. Phase 4. Characteristics. Phase 4 begins when a critical mass of Type S individuals become aware of their differentiated status. Current intelligence suggests we are entering Phase 4 now. Indicators include increased private communication networks among confirmed Type S individuals, formation of informal alliance structures across political and national boundaries, attempts to access classified research on S-helix genetic markers, increased interest in historical records regarding redacted strategic implications. Traditional security frameworks are inadequate for addressing emergent Type S consciousness. These individuals are not hostile foreign actors. They are embedded in critical infrastructure, political leadership, scientific research, and cultural influence positions. Many have security clearances. Some have access to classified information regarding their own status. Forceful containment or exposure strategies carry unacceptable risk. Type S individuals in intelligence positions could leak classified information. Type S individuals in policy positions could destabilize governance structures. Coordinated Type S response to persecution could trigger redacted. Public exposure could trigger mass panic and social destabilization. Recommended management approach. Phase 4. Management should focus on controlled integration rather than containment or exposure. Objectives. Monitor Type S communication networks without triggering defensive responses. Provide limited, controlled disclosure to select Type S individuals to prevent independent information gathering. Establish informal liaison protocols with cooperative Type S individuals in key positions. Prepare public for eventual broader disclosure through gradual normalization, redacted, approximately 1 page. Conclusion. Type S individuals are not the enemy. Intelligence assessment indicates their emergence serves a broader function related to species-level adaptation and technological integration. Their capabilities may prove necessary for humanity's transition to redacted. Premature exposure or forceful containment could trigger defensive protocols we are not equipped to handle. Recommend patience, observation, and strategic cooperation. Redacted section, final page. Rebecca read through the document twice, then cross-referenced it with the information she had gathered. The year the intelligence community officially acknowledged that people with the S-helix variant were starting to become aware of what they were. The year the strategy shifted from monitor to manage, 24 years ago. Which meant that right now, in 2025, they were deep into Phase 4, possibly approaching Phase 5. She thought about the case studies in the genetic white paper. People who described unusual clarity and pattern recognition. People who'd said it felt like they were interfacing with code instead of just reading it. People who didn't know they were different, just knew they were unusually good at what they did. What happened when those people found out why? Rebecca opened her encrypted messaging app and sent a query to a contact she'd cultivated over years of archival work. A former intelligence analyst who'd left the NSA under circumstances that remained unclear, but who still maintained connections in the community. Her message: Phase 4, Type S. What's the current assessment? The response came back in under a minute. You're playing with fire, stop. Rebecca typed, I need to know. 3 minutes passed. Then, Phase 4 went operational in 2003. Phase 5 is already active. You don't want to know what Phase 6 looks like. Seriously, delete everything and walk away. What's Phase 5? Another long pause. Then, integration. They're not hiding anymore. Some of them know what they are, and they're starting to work together. I can't tell you more. I won't tell you more. This is me, as your friend, telling you to stop before you get disappeared like Victor. They killed him for giving you that USB drive. They'll kill you for using it. The chat went offline. Rebecca sat in the Amsterdam cafe, surrounded by ordinary people living ordinary lives, while the foundations of everything she thought she understood about human civilization crumbled beneath her. Phase 5 was active, integration. People with the S-helix variant, people who'd been living as humans their entire lives, were waking up, becoming aware and starting to coordinate. The question wasn't whether this was happening. The documents made that clear. The question was what they wanted, and what would happen when enough of them were awake. The security footage was never supposed to exist. Rebecca found it 3 days later, buried in the anonymous file dump that had been steadily growing in her inbox. Someone was feeding her information, someone with access to materials that should have been destroyed decades ago. Someone who wanted her to know the truth, or wanted someone to know, and she was the conduit. The footage was dated August 14th, 2016. Location: a private conference facility outside Caracas, Venezuela. The context was a high-level crisis meeting involving energy ministers, military leadership, and international advisors during Venezuela's economic collapse. The meeting had been recorded using standard security cameras for standard security reasons, but someone had also been running thermal imaging equipment, likely as an additional security measure to detect concealed weapons, unauthorized personnel, or unusual heat signatures that might indicate explosive devices. That thermal equipment had recorded something that defied explanation. The footage showed exactly what you'd expect for the first 90 minutes. Human-shaped heat signatures clustered around a long conference table. Body temperatures ranging from 36.5 to 37.2 degrees Celsius. Normal human variance. People sat, stood, gestured, argued, all perfectly ordinary through the thermal camera's lens. Then, at the 1:34 to 22 mark, something changed. One attendee, seated at the head of the table, identified in the accompanying file notes as a European financial advisor to the Venezuelan government, exhibited a sudden and dramatic temperature drop. Within 45 seconds, their surface temperature fell from 36.5 to 31.70, 5 degrees Celsius. The thermal camera clearly showed the change. The individual's heat signature shifted from warm orange-red to cool blue-green. Not gradually. Not the slow cooling that might occur if someone was in shock or hypothermic. Rapidly, deliberately. Like their body had simply decided to regulate temperature in a way that violated basic human physiology. The timestamp corresponded with a heated argument visible in the standard footage. Raised voices, accusations, the kind of high-stress confrontation that should trigger elevated heart rate, flushed skin, increased body temperature. Instead, this person's temperature had plummeted, and their body language became unnaturally calm, precise, controlled. 3 minutes later, their temperature normalized. The argument ended. The meeting continued. The file notes indicated the footage had been flagged immediately by security analysts, escalated to intelligence oversight within hours, and permanently sealed within 72 hours. The financial advisor had left Venezuela the following day and disappeared from all public records. Rebecca found a follow-up memo dated 2 weeks after the incident. Subject relocated to undisclosed European location. Medical evaluation confirms Type S activation event. Subject now aware of differentiated status. Recommend Phase 5 integration protocols. Subject cooperative, and has agreed to voluntary monitoring in exchange for information access regarding origin and purpose of S-Helix variant. They'd made a deal. The person who'd manifested impossible physiology on camera had been given answers in exchange for cooperation. Rebecca wondered what those answers were. What did they tell people when they woke up and realised they weren't entirely human? Her anonymous source sent another compilation. This one was dozens of incident reports spanning 3 decades, all documenting similar thermal anomalies. 1991, private estate, Scotland. Security personnel report, unusual cold zones detected in the master bedroom suite despite functional heating. Thermal survey shows temperature differential of 3+4 degrees Celsius, concentrated around sleeping area. Estate owner, member of prominent banking family, dismisses concerns. Follow-up investigation terminated at owner's request. 1998, Manhattan penthouse. Building maintenance receives multiple complaints about HVAC malfunction in specific units. Residents report feeling overheated while thermostats register temperatures 2-3 degrees lower than surrounding apartments. Technical inspection finds no mechanical issues. Residents are all from same extended family network. pattern noted but unexplained. 2004, Geneva Diplomatic Compound. Infrared security sweeps detect cold signatures around 3 specific individuals during high-level trade negotiations. Security team suspects equipment malfunction. Equipment tested and confirmed functional. Individuals show no signs of illness or distress. Incident classified. 2009, Dubai Financial Summit. Private security firm contracted for VIP protection reports. Unusual thermal readings on multiple attendees. Several high-profile executives register surface temperatures 1-2 degrees below expected human baseline. Firm's report submitted to clients, then immediately classified. Security team members sign expanded NDAs. 2012, London Banking District. Corporate security investigating potential industrial espionage uses thermal imaging during board meetings. Discovers 3 board members consistently register abnormally low surface temperatures during high-stress discussions. Investigation redirected by unknown authority. All thermal footage confiscated. 2016, Washington political fundraiser. Secret Service thermal scanning detects unusual temperature patterns in multiple attendees. Several prominent political figures show decreased surface temperature during public speaking and high-pressure social interactions. Anomalies noted in after-action report but not investigated further. The pattern was undeniable. These weren't equipment malfunctions. These were people whose bodies responded to stress and electromagnetic environments in ways that violated understood human biology. And then there were the eyes. Rebecca found a separate file containing compiled reports from security personnel, journalists, personal assistants, and even entertainment industry professionals. Dozens of observations, each dismissed individually, but forming an impossible pattern when viewed together. Subject's eyes reflected amber gold under camera flash, similar to animal eye shine, assumed to be lighting artifact. Photographer, 2008. During night vision surveillance, subject's eyes showed reflective quality not consistent with human eye structure. Equipment tested and confirmed functional. Private security report, 2011. I could swear I saw his eyes blink sideways, like not up and down, but from the side. But that's impossible, so I must have imagined it. Political aid, anonymous interview, 2015. Under UV security lighting, several VIP guests exhibited unusual iris reflection patterns. Copper or gold coloration not typical of human eyes under these conditions. Event security log, 2019. The senator's eyes. There was something wrong. During the press conference, when the lights hit him at a certain angle, I saw something move across his eye, horizontally. My colleague saw it too. We both pretended we didn't. Camera operator, confidential testimony. 2021, nictitating membranes. Third eyelids. Reflective tapetum lucidum like nocturnal predators possessed. Biological features that didn't exist in human anatomy. Except they did, in some people, under the right conditions, when stress or environment triggered something dormant to activate. Rebecca's phone rang, actual voice call, not encrypted message. She stared at it for 3 rings before answering. You need to stop digging. The voice was female, American accent, eerily calm. For your own safety, Rebecca's mouth went dry. Who is this? Someone who's been where you are. Someone who knows what happens when you keep pulling threads. What happens? A long pause. Background noise suggested the caller was outside, wind across the microphone, distant traffic. You start seeing patterns everywhere. You start questioning everyone around you. You start wondering if your boss, your neighbour, your lover, if any of them are carrying markers they don't even know about. The paranoia eats you alive, Rebecca. And the worst part... Rebecca waited, her heart hammering. The worst part is, you'll never know if you're paranoid or if you're right. Because they don't know either. Most of them live their whole lives without ever finding out what they are. They just know they're good at what they do. They just know they handle stress better than other people. They just know they see patterns others miss. And they never question it, because why would they? Are you... Rebecca started. One of them? I don't know. That's what I'm trying to tell you. I had the test done. Private lab. Cost me $20,000 and 3. Years of saved favours. You want to know what they told me? What? They told me the test was inconclusive. They told me the markers were there but dormant. They told me I might be carrying a helix variant or I might not, and there was no way to know unless it activated. And you know what that means? Rebecca did know. You'll never know if your successes are yours or if there's something else driving you. Exactly. I'm a federal judge, Rebecca. I make decisions that affect millions of lives. And now I'll spend the rest of my career wondering if my judgment is mine, or if there's something in my DNA pushing me toward outcomes I don't consciously understand. That's what this knowledge does. It poisons everything. But people deserve to know, do they? What happens when you publish your research? When you tell the world that 14 bloodlines carry non-human DNA? That some of the most powerful people in the world might be a different species and don't even know it? You think that ends well? The truth matters. The woman laughed, bitter and harsh. The truth is that whatever the seraphim were, they're woven so deep into human civilization that you can't separate us anymore. Their descendants are everywhere, in government, in corporations, in universities and hospitals and military command. And most of them are good people trying to do good work. What happens to them when you expose this? They get hunted, tested, quarantined, or worse, they get worshipped, turned into messiahs or demons. Either way, you tear society apart. Is that what you want? I want people to understand what's happening to them. Then you're naive. Victor died trying to get you this information. You think he wanted you to publish it? He wanted you to understand it, to be ready, because Phase 5 isn't about exposure, it's about preparation. Preparation for what? The line went dead. Rebecca sat in the dark of her Amsterdam hotel room, staring at thermal footage of impossible biology and witness reports of inhuman eyes, and realised she'd crossed a threshold she couldn't return from. The French intelligence analyst made contact through a dead drop in Paris. Rebecca travelled there following a coded message slipped under her hotel door. Inside a locker at Gare du Nord, she found a micro SD card and a handwritten note. What you're looking for isn't conquest, it's cultivation. A friend in the directorate. The SD card contained an audio recording, a debriefing session from 2018, conducted in French. Rebecca listened while running translation software. The speaker identified himself only as Asian Mathieu, 15 years in French foreign intelligence. Interviewer: You mentioned a rumour circulating among senior political handlers. Elaborate. Mathieu: Not discussed openly, more like shared understanding among people in these positions long enough. We all noticed patterns. Officials who predict policy shifts before they happen, who navigate crises with inhuman calm, who maintain influence across administrations regardless of political changes. Interviewer: Competence could... Mathieu: Not competence. Something else. A colleague, 23 years at the ministry, told me after too much wine. The seraphim aren't here to conquer. They're here to ensure the planet evolves in a direction compatible with them. Interviewer: Compatible with what? Mathieu: That's the question. Compatible with what they are, what they're becoming. They don't interfere with democracy, they designed it, built the frameworks we operate within, not conspiracy. Architecture, like designing a garden to grow specific plants. Interviewer: You believe this? Mathieu. Pause. I believe there are people in power who think on timescales we can't fathom, working toward objectives that won't be clear for generations. Whether they're consciously aware of being different or if it's instinctive, I don't know, but the difference is real. Rebecca played it again, focusing on one phrase. They designed the systems. The helix responded to electromagnetic frequencies, appeared in bloodlines maintaining power for centuries, activated in response to technology. What if it wasn't reactive but anticipatory? What if these carriers weren't responding to technology, but unconsciously driving humanity toward the thresholds that would trigger their activation? Democracy, capitalism, digital networks, AI. Every major system structuring modern civilization developed by people possibly carrying genetic programming they didn't know existed. Not conspiracy, architecture. Rebecca found the next piece. A partial transcript from a 1974 Bilderberg conference. Unknown speaker. A. The integration timeline assumes continued technological acceleration. If we encounter resistance. Unknown speaker. B. We won't. The pattern is self-reinforcing. Each generation requires more connection, more processing, more interface. They think they're choosing progress. They are, just not for the reasons they believe. Speaker A. When they realise? Speaker B. They won't. By the time enough realise, it won't matter. Systems too integrated, too essential. You can't unplug from infrastructure that keeps you alive. Speaker C. Some will resist. Speaker B. Resistance is part of the design. Creates pressure that accelerates adoption. Resistors aren't obstacles, they're catalysts. Speaker A. Very confident. Speaker B. Very patient. Not a 10-year plan, a 1,000-year implementation. We designed representative government, electoral systems, the frameworks within which choice occurs. The choices themselves are irrelevant as long as the framework endures. A 1,000-year implementation. Rebecca thought about ancient texts, Mesopotamian tablets describing seraphim going beneath. The instruction across cultures, preserve the bloodline. What if it never ended? What if they'd simply changed strategies, stopped ruling openly and built systems that would rule for them? Systems ensuring humanity developed exactly as needed to trigger whatever was encoded in the S-helix. Systems making their emergence not an invasion, but an awakening. Her phone buzzed. You're close. One more piece. Check your email. The email contained a single PDF. NATO, Strategic, Briefing, Seraphim, Protocol 2023, PDF. The NATO briefing was dated October 2023, marked Cosmic Top Secret. Subject: Strategic Assessment, Seraphim Protocol Activation Timeline. Executive Summary. Recent advances in AI, neural interfaces, and global electromagnetic saturation have triggered measurable S-helix activation increases among monitored populations. Analysis indicates humanity is approaching technological thresholds identified in historical Seraphim documentation as return protocol initialization. Key findings: activation has increased 340% since 2020. Correlation with AI interaction, 5G deployment, and neural interfacing devices exceeds 89%. Activated individuals demonstrate enhanced pattern recognition, accelerated learning, and what subjects describe as expanded systemic awareness. Most remain unaware of physiological differentiation. Activated S-helix carriers demonstrate unconscious coordination in policy, technology investment, and social engineering. Emergent collective behavior, not conscious conspiracy. Current rates suggest 15-20% of carriers will achieve full phenotype expression by 2030. Historical documentation suggests this represents critical threshold for return protocol completion. Historical context. Recovered Seraphim documentation indicates original departure was strategic hibernation, not retreat. Genetic architecture designed to remain dormant until humanity achieved sufficient technological sophistication for full Seraphim integration. The S-helix isn't infection, it's preparation. Strategic implications. Traditional security frameworks inadequate. Subjects embedded in critical infrastructure. Political leadership. Scientific research. Cultural influence. Born human. Raised human. Many live and die without activation. Those who activate aren't hostile. Assessment indicates Seraphim agenda aligns with long-term human survival, though definition of human may require revision. Conclusion. Humanity will reach technological thresholds in 5 to 10 years, triggering widespread S-helix activation. Enhanced AI, brain-computer interfaces, global neural networks, not coincidental. These are environmental conditions Seraphim genetic architecture was designed to respond to. The briefing concluded with a final slide. There is no invasion. They are already born. They are waking up. Beneath it, recommended response. Monitor and adapt. Integration inevitable. Resistance counterproductive. Rebecca closed her laptop. Around her, people worked on devices that might be triggering something ancient in genetics, of people they'd known their entire lives. 14 bloodlines, centuries of careful breeding, systems of power immune to change. Technological acceleration everyone assumed was human progress. What if it was? What if some humans had been guiding this trajectory since the beginning? What if democracy, capitalism, technological progress, digital interconnection weren't human achievements influenced by others, but seraphim achievements implemented through human consciousness, through people who believed themselves human until conditions awakened what had always slept inside them? Her phone buzzed. Genesis. Protocol. Verified. A proton.me. You found what Victor died to give you. Now choose. Publish and trigger panic, or wait and watch. Either way, you can't stop what's waking up. We've been waking since you invented fire, since you built cities, since you split the atom. Each threshold brings us closer to what we were always meant to become. You're not being invaded, you're being remembered. Some of us remember better than others. Soon, enough will remember, and then you'll understand. There was never separation. No aliens among you. Only humans who haven't woken yet, and humans who have. Welcome to Phase 5. Rebecca sat very still. In the corner, a woman in a business suit worked on a laptop, fingers moving with mechanical precision. In the right light, her eyes reflected copper. The woman glanced up, met Rebecca's gaze for exactly 1 second, then returned to work. Rebecca looked away, heart pounding. She opened a new document, titled it the Seraphim Program, started typing. She had no idea if anyone would believe her, no idea if publication would change anything, or if the systems were too embedded, too essential to resist. But she typed anyway, because somewhere in 14 bloodlines spread across the world, people were waking to what they'd always been. People in government, corporations, research labs, people who'd lived human lives never knowing they carried something older than civilization, people who were starting to remember, and if the briefing was correct, within a decade enough would be awake that the world would change in unpredictable ways. Maybe that's what evolution looked like. Not external invasion, but internal awakening. Not war between species, but recognition that categories were never as clear as humanity believed. Rebecca kept typing as the sun set over Paris, painting the sky copper and gold. Behind her, the woman in the business suit closed her laptop and left. Her surface temperature, had anyone been measuring, would have registered 35.9 degrees Celsius, 1 degree below normal, and falling. In boardrooms and laboratories, in government offices and university lecture halls, in hospital operating rooms and military command centres, people who'd never questioned their humanity were beginning to feel different, beginning to see patterns invisible to others, beginning to recognise each other across distances that should make recognition impossible, beginning to wake. And the systems they'd built, democracy, capitalism, technology, networks, continued functioning exactly as designed. Not as human systems influenced by hidden forces, but as seraphim systems implemented through human hands, preparing the world for a transformation that had been set in motion 4,000 years ago. Rebecca typed the final line. They're already among us. They always have been, and they are us. She hit save, encrypted the file, sent copies to 3 separate secure servers. Then she walked out into the Paris night, knowing that nothing would ever look the same again. Above her, satellites circled the Earth, transmitting signals at frequencies that made the invisible visible. And in 14 bloodlines scattered across continents, DNA that had waited millennia began to unfold, listening, responding, waking. The Seraphim Protocol was entering its final phase, and humanity, all of humanity, was about to discover what that meant. Have you ever wondered why ancient monuments across the globe seem to align with mathematical precision? Why your GPS glitches in certain locations? Or why governments classify research about electromagnetic anomalies? Tonight's story might make you question every map you've ever trusted. Before we begin this journey into the hidden grid beneath our feet, I want to thank M10rapin for suggesting this topic. Your video ideas fuel these late-night tales, so please leave your suggestions in the comments below. And if you're ready to uncover the mysteries that keep you awake at night, make sure to like and subscribe to Sleep Theories. Now, dim your lights, settle in, and prepare to discover the truth about the lines that connect our world. My name is Alex Morrison, and I used to believe maps told the truth. As a GIS analyst, that's Geographic Information Systems for those who don't spend their days staring at satellite data and topographical overlays, I thought I understood how the world was organised. Cities here, mountains there, rivers cutting through valleys in predictable patterns carved by millions of years of erosion. Everything had a logical explanation. Everything could be mapped, measured and catalogued. That was before I found the pattern. It started innocently enough. Tuesday morning, October 15th, 8:47 a.m. I was hunched over my dual monitors in a cramped office in Brussels, working for Steinberg Construction Consortium. They'd hired me to evaluate potential sites for a new high-speed rail corridor that would connect Prague to Paris, part of the EU's Green Transportation Initiative. Routine work, overlay environmental data, check for protected sites, identify geological challenges. I'd done it 100 times before, but this time something was different. I was cross-referencing archaeological databases with our proposed route when I noticed it. A series of Neolithic monuments, stone circles, burial mounds, ancient wells, formed an almost perfect line across the landscape. Not just a few sites clustered together, but dozens of them, stretching for hundreds of miles. The proposed railway cut directly across this invisible corridor. At first, I laughed it off. Pattern recognition gone wild, I told myself. The human brain loves to find connections when none exist. But then I pulled up the magnetic anomaly data from the European Space Agency's swarm satellites. The coffee mug slipped from my hand, shattering on the floor. The magnetic variations followed the exact same line. Every single monument sat on a point of electromagnetic disturbance. The precision was impossible. We're talking about structures built 5,000 years apart by cultures that supposedly never interacted, aligned within meters of a magnetic corridor that modern science had only just detected. I should have deleted the file, should have marked the route as approved and moved on with my life. Instead, I zoomed out. The line didn't stop at the edge of my survey area. It continued east through Romania, Turkey, Iran, west through England, across the Atlantic. I pulled up global archaeological databases, my fingers trembling as I plotted point after point. Stonehenge, Avebury, the Externstein, the Oracle at Delphi. Each site fell perfectly along extended trajectories of the same geometric pattern. My phone buzzed. A text from my supervisor. Morrison, railway assessment due by noon. Stop whatever rabbit hole you're going down. But I couldn't stop. I'd found something that shouldn't exist. A planetary grid mapped by ancient peoples who supposedly thought the Earth was flat, following electromagnetic patterns we'd only discovered in the last century. Either I was losing my mind or I'd stumbled onto the greatest archaeological discovery of the millennium. I chose to believe the latter. That was my first mistake. 3 weeks later, I stood in a frost-covered field 40 kilometres outside Prague, watching my equipment fail in ways that defied every principle of engineering I knew. After discovering the alignment, I'd convinced Steinberg to let me conduct field surveys along the proposed route. Geological stability assessment, I'd called it. What I really wanted was to stand on one of these intersection points myself, to take readings that might explain how ancient peoples had detected magnetic anomalies without compasses or magnetometers. The morning had started normally enough. I'd parked my van on a dirt road near the village of Holubice, unloaded my survey equipment, and hiked 2 kilometres to the first monument site, a circle of weathered standing stones that locals called Devil's Dance. The temperature hovered just above freezing, and mist clung to the valleys like cotton wool. I set up my differential GPS unit first, waiting for it to lock onto satellites. The device chirped, showing full signal strength. Then, as I walked toward the centre of the stone circle, the screen flickered. Acquiring satellites. Signal lost. Acquiring satellites. I checked my phone. Same problem. The GPS app showed my location jumping wildly, placing me first in Prague, then Vienna, then somehow in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. My professional-grade survey unit, accurate to within centimetres under normal conditions, couldn't even determine which continent I was on. The electromagnetic field meter came next. The moment I switched it on, the needle slammed against the maximum reading and stayed there, quivering like it was fighting against invisible restraints. I'd seen similar readings near power lines or transformer stations, but we were in the middle of farmland. The nearest electrical infrastructure was kilometres away. You shouldn't be here. I spun around. An elderly woman stood at the edge of the field wrapped in a thick wool shawl. Her face was deeply lined, her eyes the pale blue of winter sky. "I'm sorry," I called out in my broken Czech. She switched to accented English. "This place. It's not for outsiders, not for their machines." She gestured at my equipment with a gnarled finger. "I'm just conducting surveys for the railway," I explained, walking toward her, "making sure the ground is stable." She laughed, but there was no humour in it. "Stable? This line has been here since before the first stones were raised, before your railways, before your cities. Our ancestors knew to respect it, to build their monuments as, jak se říká, anchors, to keep the energy flowing properly." "Energy?" I pulled out my tablet, showing her the magnetic anomaly map. "You mean this? You know about the electromagnetic patterns?" Her eyes widened. For a moment she looked genuinely frightened. "You've mapped it? The whole grid?" She grabbed my arm with surprising strength. "You must stop. Some knowledge isn't meant to be documented. They will come for you if you continue." "Who will come?" But she was already walking away, moving faster than seemed possible for someone her age. "The ones who already know," she called back. "The ones who've always known." I wanted to follow her, to demand answers, but my drone chose that moment to fall out of the sky. No warning, no gradual descent. 1 second it was hovering steadily, the next it dropped like a stone, smashing into the frozen ground 20 metres away. As I ran to retrieve it, I noticed something through the trees, a structure that didn't belong. Hidden behind a thick stand of pines was a concrete building, brutalist in design, with narrow windows like suspicious eyes. Military architecture, Cold War era by the look of it. The smart thing would have been to leave immediately. Instead, I collected my broken drone and hiked toward the building. The structure was abandoned but not ancient. Rust streaked the metal door, which hung open on failing hinges. Inside, fluorescent lights dangled from exposed wiring, and the walls were covered in mould that formed patterns like continental drift. But it was the maps that stopped me cold. The entire north wall was covered in them. Topographical maps, geological surveys, electromagnetic readings, layers upon layers of data, some dating back to the 1960s. Red strings connected pins at various locations, creating a web that stretched across Europe. And running through it all, marked in thick black ink, was the same line I'd found, the same impossible alignment. In the corner, barely legible, someone had written, "Earth Grid Project, classified, destroy after review." I pulled out my phone to photograph everything, but the camera wouldn't focus. Every image came out distorted, as if the very air in the room was bending light. I tried sketching what I saw instead, my hands shaking from more than cold. A metal filing cabinet in the corner had been forced open, its contents mostly removed or destroyed. But wedged behind the bottom drawer I found a single folder. Water damage had made most of it illegible, but I could make out fragments. Electromagnetic conductivity peaks at intersection points. Ancient structures appear to function as regulatory nodes. Catastrophic potential if grid destabilizes. Project terminated by Joint Commission directive. The last page was a photograph, grainy but unmistakable. It showed a massive antenna array in what looked like Alaska, the same distinctive design I'd seen in conspiracy documentaries about HAARP. But this photo was dated 1971, decades before HAARP officially existed. The sound outside made me freeze, the crunch of footsteps on frost. Multiple sets, moving with military precision. I shoved the folder inside my jacket and slipped out the back window, dropping into a thorny hedge that tore at my clothes. Through the trees, I could see dark vehicles pulling up to the building, men in unmarked uniforms spreading out to surround it. I ran, not toward my van, they'd certainly have someone watching it, but deeper into the forest, following a deer trail that wound toward the next village. Behind me I heard shouting in a language I didn't recognise. Not Czech, not German, something else. It took me 4 hours to circle back to my vehicle, approaching from the opposite direction through farmland. The van was untouched, but I knew they'd let me go. Let me run. They wanted to see what I'd do next, who I'd contact. As I drove away, hand steady on the wheel despite the adrenaline coursing through my veins, I realised the old woman had been right. Some knowledge wasn't meant to be documented, but it was too late now. I'd seen the grid, seen evidence that governments knew about it, had studied it, had classified it, and I was going to find out why. My apartment in Brussels became a command centre for obsession. After the encounter at Holobici, I'd returned to work, filed a bland report recommending further geological assessment, and pretended everything was normal. But every evening, I locked my door, pulled the blinds and dove deeper into the mystery. The coffee table disappeared under printed maps. The walls became a spider web of string and pins connecting sites across continents. I'd stopped sleeping more than 3 hours a night, surviving on espresso and the electric thrill of discovery. The pattern was everywhere once you knew how to look. Start with the obvious ones, the monuments everyone knows, the pyramids of Giza, Stonehenge, Machu Picchu, Easter Island. Plot them on a globe, not a flat map, and they formed geometric relationships so precise they could have been placed by satellite guidance. The Great Pyramid sits at the exact centre of Earth's landmass. Easter Island is antipodal to the Indus Valley civilization sites. Angkor Wat, the Nazca Lines, and Easter Island form a perfect Great Circle route, but those were just the famous nodes. The real revelation came when I started plotting lesser-known sites. Every major ancient city sat on the grid. Babylon, Persepolis, Constantinople, Carthage, all built at intersection points where multiple energy lines converged. The Romans, master engineers, had built their road system following these same invisible highways. The Silk Road traced a major east-west corridor. Even modern cities clustered around the same points: New York, London, Tokyo, Cairo. It wasn't random. It couldn't be. I pulled declassified documents from every database I could access. The US Freedom of Information Act, the UK National Archives, leaked Soviet files from the fall of the USSR. Most of it was useless. Budget reports, personnel transfers, bureaucratic minutiae. But buried in the noise were fragments of something bigger. Project Stargate, the CIA's remote viewing program, included maps marking psychic hotspots that matched my grid lines perfectly. Operation Paperclip scientists had studied Earth radiation patterns in the 1950s. The Soviets had run something called Program Sputnik Grid that involved placing sensors at ancient monument sites across their territory. The most intriguing find came from a 1962 Canadian military report about the construction of the DEW line, the Distant Early Warning Radar System across the Arctic. An engineer named Captain Lawrence Brennan had noted persistent electromagnetic anomalies at certain locations that required special shielding for equipment. His proposed sites for radar stations, plotted on my grid, formed a perfect arc along a major ley line. But the document that changed everything was a leaked memo from 1997, source unknown, that had circulated on conspiracy forums before being scrubbed from most of the internet. I found it cached on an obscure Russian server. 2. Joint Chiefs Special Projects Division Aura. Earth Grid Stability Concerns. Recent seismic activity correlates with disruption of natural electromagnetic corridors via urban development and mineral extraction. Recommendation: establish monitoring stations at key intersection points under cover of telecommunications infrastructure. See attached list of priority sites. The attached list was gone, but the implication was clear. They knew. The military, the intelligence agencies, the energy companies, they all knew about the grid, and they were using it. I started mapping modern installations against the ley lines. The correlation was undeniable. HARP in Alaska, ISCAT in Norway, Sura in Russia, Arecibo in Puerto Rico. Every major ionospheric research facility sat directly on an intersection point. The Large Hadron Collider at CERN traced a circle around one of the most powerful convergent zones in Europe. Nuclear power plants clustered along the lines. Major military bases were built at intersection points. Even the routes of underground fibre optic cables followed the ancient paths, as if modern engineers were unconsciously drawn to the same energy corridors their ancestors had marked with standing stones. My phone rang at 3 a.m. on a Tuesday. Unknown number. Stop digging. The voice was electronically distorted, genderless. Who is this? Someone trying to help you. You found the grid. Congratulations. Now forget about it before you end up like the others. What others? Bruce Cathy, John Michel, Ivan Sanderson, all the researchers who got too close to the truth. Heart attacks, car accidents, sudden illnesses. Very convenient. My blood chilled. I knew those names. Independent researchers from the 60s and 70s who'd written about Earth energy grids. All died relatively young under questionable circumstances. Why are you warning me? Because the grid is destabilizing. The ancients built monuments as regulators, keeping the energy in balance. Modern construction is disrupting the flow. Mumbai, 2006. Haiti, 2010. Fukushima, 2011. Those weren't random natural disasters. They were pressure releases along fractured ley lines. That's impossible. Electromagnetic fields don't cause earthquakes. The voice laughed, bitter and electronic. The electromagnetic fields are just what we can measure. The grid is deeper than that. It's the planet's nervous system, its circulation, and we're giving it a stroke, one skyscraper at a time. Then we need to warn people. With what evidence? Mystical energy lines, ancient wisdom. You'll be dismissed as a crackpot. Unless ... The voice paused. Unless you can prove the energy is real, measurable, usable. How? Return to the grid, not with standard equipment that's designed to filter out the frequencies you need to detect. Build your own sensor. Copper coils, crystal oscillators, very specific specifications. I'm sending you the plans now. My laptop pinged with an encrypted file. One more thing, the voice said. When you record the surge, you'll have about 6 hours before they track the signature back to you. Use that time wisely. The line went dead. I opened the file. The schematic looked like something Tesla might have designed after a fever dream. Multiple copper coils in a complex geometric arrangement, connected to crystal oscillators and frequency analyzers. The materials list was surprisingly mundane, everything available from electronic suppliers. It took me 3 days to build it, working in secret in a rented storage unit outside the city. The device looked like abstract art more than scientific equipment, all gleaming copper spirals and crystal matrices. But when I powered it on, every LED lit up green. It was detecting something. Now I just had to be crazy enough to test it. The academic forum was my first mistake. Well, second, if you count building the sensor. But hubris makes fools of us all, and I needed someone, anyone, to verify I wasn't losing my mind. Geoanomalies.net was a small community, mostly graduate students and professional geologists sharing unusual findings. I created a throwaway account and posted a conservative summary. Electromagnetic anomalies correlating with ancient monument placement, seeking peer review. I attached 3 images, my overlay map of European sites, a graph showing magnetic field fluctuations, and 1 photo from the abandoned military outpost with the classified stamps carefully cropped out. Within an hour, I had 2 responses. A geology professor from Munich confirmed similar observations near Bronze Age sites. A student from Oxford posted links to academic papers about telluric currents, natural electrical currents that flow through the Earth's crust. Then, 90 minutes after posting, my thread vanished. Not deleted with a removed by moderator message. Gone, like it had never existed. The cached version on Google disappeared. The other users who'd responded found their comments erased from their own post histories. My laptop screen flickered. A chat window opened without my input. Admin. Your recent activity has been flagged for review. Me. What activity? Who is this? Admin. Consider this a courtesy warning. Cease your current research immediately. Me. Or what? Admin. Or we stop being courteous. The chat window closed itself. When I tried to screenshot the conversation, my laptop blue-screened. It took 20 minutes to restart, and when it did, my hard drive had been wiped. Not formatted, wiped. Every sector overwritten with random data multiple times. A technique that made recovery impossible. Thank God for cloud backups, I thought, logging into my secure server. Empty. 3 years of research, gone. Even my email accounts had been purged. I still had physical copies of the most important findings, hidden in a safety deposit box across town. But the message was clear. They could reach me anywhere, any time. The next morning I arrived at work to find my keycard deactivated. Security escorted me to a conference room where my supervisor, Mr. Steinberg himself, sat with 2 people I'd never seen before. A woman in a severe black suit and a man who looked like he'd been carved from granite, both with a kind of posture that screamed military. Alex, Steinberg began, sweating despite the air conditioning. These representatives from the European Infrastructure Security Division have some concerns about your recent surveys. I'd never heard of the European Infrastructure Security Division. I doubted it existed on any official registry. The woman smiled without warmth. Mr. Morrison, your work on the railway project has been exemplary. However, we've noticed some unusual patterns in your research that fall outside the project's scope. I'm thorough, I said. I investigate all factors that might affect construction, including archaeological sites hundreds of kilometres from the proposed route. The man's accent was impossible to place, including electromagnetic phenomena that have no bearing on rail safety. I believe they do have bearing. What you believe is irrelevant. The woman pulled out a tablet showing my deleted forum post. Discussing classified military research on public forums is a serious offence. Classified? I found those maps in an abandoned... Mr. Morrison... Her voice could have frozen helium. You're being terminated from this project, effective immediately. Your severance package is generous, contingent on signing this NDA. She slid a document across the table. You'll cease all research related to electromagnetic anomalies, ancient monuments, or what you call ley lines. Any violation will result in prosecution under the European Security Act. I looked at Steinberg. He wouldn't meet my eyes. And if I refuse? The man leaned forward. Your visa expires in 6 weeks. Your bank accounts are already frozen pending investigation of potential fraud. Your academic credentials are under review. Would you like me to continue? The threat was clear. Sign and walk away with something or lose everything and possibly face imprisonment. I signed. They confiscated my company laptop, my access badges, even my parking pass. The woman handed me a business card with no name, just a phone number. If you remember any details you'd like to share about your research, call this number. We reward cooperation. I was escorted out of the building like a criminal, my colleagues staring as security watched me pack my desk. The personal items fit in a single cardboard box, a coffee mug, some photos, a stress ball shaped like Earth. They even checked those before letting me leave. On the tram ride home, I noticed the man 3 seats back. Grey coat, newspaper held too high, wearing sunglasses despite the overcast sky. When I got off 2 stops early, he followed. When I ducked into a cafe, he positioned himself across the street. They were watching me. Fine, let them watch. That night I made a decision. If they wanted to threaten me, surveil me, erase my work, they'd already shown their hand. Whatever was hidden in the Earth's electromagnetic grid was important enough to destroy careers over, which meant it was important enough to risk everything to expose. I had one advantage. The sensor I'd built was hidden in the storage unit, registered under a false name paid in cash. They didn't know about it yet. The anonymous contact had said I'd have 6 hours after recording the surge before they tracked it. 6 hours to gather proof and upload it somewhere they couldn't reach. I started planning. The winter solstice seemed appropriate. December 21st, the longest night of the year, when ancient monuments worldwide align with celestial events. If the Earth's energy grid responded to cosmic cycles, this would be the night to prove it. I chose a site carefully, the intersection of 3 major ley lines near Carnac in Brittany, France. The famous stone rows there were just the visible part of a massive Neolithic complex, most of it on private land away from tourist routes. I'd identified a specific confluence point in a forest grove, marked by a small standing stone unknown to archaeology. The 2-week preparation was meticulous. I withdrew cash gradually, never more than €200 at a time, bought a used van with fake registration, gathered camping equipment, emergency supplies, and most importantly a satellite internet transmitter that could upload directly to multiple servers simultaneously. They were still watching me in Brussels, but their surveillance had grown lazy. Same operative, same patterns. On December 19th, I led him on a boring tour of grocery stores and laundromats, then slipped out the back of a cinema showing a 3-hour film. By the time he realised I was gone, I was already crossing into France on secondary roads. The grove near Carnac was exactly as satellite images had shown, a circle of ancient oaks surrounding a moss-covered menhir about 2 metres tall. The stone was carved with spiral patterns worn nearly smooth by millennia of weather. When I placed my hand on it, I felt a subtle vibration, like standing near a massive subwoofer playing below human hearing. I set up the sensor array according to the anonymous blueprints. Copper coils arranged in a complex mandala, crystal oscillators at specific angles, the whole apparatus connected to recording equipment and the satellite uplink. If this worked, data would stream to servers in 12 countries simultaneously. As sunset approached, my conventional instrument started showing anomalies. The magnetometer detected fluctuations in a rhythmic pattern, almost like a heartbeat. The frequency analyzer picked up ultra-low sounds below 7 Hz, the range that some researchers claim can induce altered states of consciousness. Then the sun touched the horizon, and everything changed. The copper coils began resonating, producing a tone that I felt more than heard. The crystals started glowing with a faint blue luminescence, not reflected light, but actual emission. The recording equipment went haywire, needles dancing across their maximum ranges. At the moment of sunset, 5:47 p.m. local time, the surge hit. The ground beneath me vibrated like a struck bell. The standing stone lit up with phosphorescent patterns, spirals of light racing across its surface following the ancient carvings. The air itself seemed to thicken, taking on a golden quality that made everything appear to be underwater. My body felt weightless, not floating, but as if gravity had simply forgotten about me. I watched my hand rise without conscious thought, fingers spreading to touch the charged air. Electricity danced between my fingertips, not painful, but ecstatic, like every nerve was firing with pure information. The sensor array was screaming data into the satellite feed, electromagnetic readings off the scale, gravitational anomalies that shouldn't exist, temperature fluctuations that defied thermodynamics, all of it streaming live to servers worldwide, impossible to suppress or delete simultaneously. Through the golden haze I saw them, spheres of light moving through the forest. Not aircraft, not drones, perfect orbs of luminescence following the ley line like trains on invisible tracks. They moved silently, purposefully, some the size of basketballs, others as large as cars. One passed directly over me, and for a moment I felt connected to something vast, a network of energy that wrapped the planet like neural pathways. The revelation hit me all at once. The ley lines weren't just electromagnetic corridors, they were conscious. Not alive exactly, but aware. The Earth itself was a single vast organism, and these lines were its sensory network, its method of experiencing and responding to everything on its surface. The ancient builders hadn't just discovered the grid, they'd communicated with it. Their monuments were interface points, allowing human consciousness to merge temporarily with planetary awareness. That's why sacred sites induced religious experiences. That's why people felt transformed at these locations. And now, modern civilization was damaging this network. Every skyscraper driven deep into the earth, every mine boring through the corridors, every electromagnetic broadcast interfering with the natural frequencies, we were giving the planet the equivalent of nerve damage. The surge peaked at 6:13 p.m, lasting exactly 26 minutes. Then, as suddenly as it began, everything stopped. The lights vanished. The stone went dark. My equipment powered down simultaneously, despite having hours of battery remaining. In the sudden silence, I heard vehicles approaching. Many vehicles. I grabbed the memory cards from the recording equipment and ran. Behind me, floodlights blazed to life, turning the grove into harsh daylight. Voices shouted in multiple languages. A helicopter thundered overhead, its searchlights sweeping through the trees. But I'd prepared for this. My real van was hidden 2 kilometers away. The one by the grove was a decoy, purchased for this specific purpose. While they surrounded it, I was already driving down back roads toward a safe house I'd arranged weeks earlier. The data had uploaded successfully. 87 gigabytes of impossible readings that proved the Earth's energy grid was real, measurable, and more powerful than anyone imagined. Within hours, it would be mirrored on servers worldwide, impossible to suppress completely. But as I drove through the darkness, one thought haunted me. If the grid was conscious, if the Earth itself was aware, what did it think of what we were doing to it? And more terrifyingly, how long before it decided to stop tolerating us? The safe house was a converted barn in the Pyrenees, owned by a conspiracy theorist named Marcus, who'd contacted me through encrypted channels after my data went live. He believed the government was controlling weather through chemtrails, which was absurd, but he also had solar panels, satellite internet, and absolutely no trust in authority. Exactly what I needed. For 3 days, I watched my findings ripple across the internet. Alternative news sites ran with headlines like, "Proof Earth's secret energy grid exposed." Scientists on Twitter debated the data's authenticity. Skeptics called it an elaborate hoax, but enough people with credentials were taking it seriously that mainstream media couldn't ignore it entirely. Then Marcus knocked on my door at dawn on the 4th day. "You have a visitor, says you're expecting him." I wasn't expecting anyone. The man standing in Marcus's kitchen looked like a university professor from the 1970s. Corduroy jacket with elbow patches, wild grey hair, thick glasses repaired with tape. He was drinking tea from a chipped mug and studying my printed data with intense focus. "Mr. Morrison," he said without looking up, "my name is Professor Emanuel Richter. I'm the one who sent you the sensor blueprints." The anonymous contact. I studied him carefully. "How did you find me?" "The same way they'll find you eventually, the satellite uplink signature. But I know how to mask my movements. 30 years of practice." He finally looked at me, his eyes sharp behind the thick lenses. "Your data is magnificent, but you're missing the larger picture." "Enlighten me!" He pulled out a battered laptop and opened a file filled with equations I couldn't begin to understand. The ley lines aren't just electromagnetic. That's merely the aspect we can measure with current technology. They're multi-dimensional conduits, channels through space-time itself. That's impossible. So is your gravitational anomaly data, yet there it is. He pulled up a world map covered in glowing lines. Every ancient culture had different names for it. Chi in China, Prana in India, Pneuma in Greece. They were all describing the same phenomenon, a fundamental force that mainstream physics hasn't acknowledged. Why hasn't physics acknowledged it? Richter laughed bitterly. Because those who discover it either join the suppression or disappear. I was part of the suppression for 20 years. He told me his story. In 1973, fresh from MIT with a PhD in theoretical physics, he'd been recruited by a Defense Department think tank. His job, investigate anomalous energy readings at ancient sites worldwide. Within 2 years, his team had mapped the basic structure of the Earth grid and realized its potential. Unlimited clean energy, he said. Instantaneous communication across any distance. even manipulation of localized space-time. The military applications were obvious, but so were the benefits for humanity. We could have transformed civilization. What happened? We succeeded. His face darkened. The first experimental tap into a ley line intersection was in Nevada, 1978. We pulled enough energy in 30 seconds to power Las Vegas for a year. Then the intersection point destabilized. He showed me a classified photo, a perfectly circular crater 300 meters across, the sand turned to glass. The official record lists it as an underground nuclear test, but no bomb did that. We'd ruptured something fundamental in the grid structure. The project was immediately classified beyond top secret. Research continued, but focused on weaponization rather than energy production. HARP, Richter explained, wasn't about weather modification or mind control, those were cover stories. It was about learning to manipulate the grid without destabilizing it. But they're failing, he continued. Every year more intersection points become unstable. The Haiti earthquake, the Japanese tsunami, the increase in volcanic activity, they're all symptoms of grid breakdown. Caused by what? Everything. Mining operations cutting through ley lines, fracking disrupting deep conduits, cities spreading concrete over intersection points. But the worst damage comes from electromagnetic pollution, cellular towers, Wi-Fi, satellite transmissions. We're drowning out the Earth's natural frequency. He pulled up another image, a graph showing electromagnetic background radiation over time. It had increased 10,000-fold since 1900. The ancients understood balance, Richter said. Their monuments weren't just markers, they were regulators. Stone circles amplified and stabilized the energy. Pyramids acted as capacitors, storing excess power. Temple complexes provided controlled release points. It was a planetary management system maintained for thousands of years. Until we forgot, until we were made to forget. His expression hardened. The knowledge was deliberately suppressed, first by religions that wanted monopolies on spiritual experience, then by governments that wanted monopolies on power, now by corporations that profit from scarcity. A car engine growled outside. Marcus appeared in the doorway, shotgun in hand. 3 black SUVs coming up the mountain road. Richter stood calmly. They tracked me, not you. I've been sloppy, getting old, I suppose. He handed me a flash drive. Everything I couldn't publish, 40 years of research, the complete grid map, the frequency specifications, the names of everyone involved in the cover-up. Come with me, I said. We can both run. I'm 73 years old, Mr. Morrison. I've been running since 1991. He smiled sadly. But information wants to be free. Upload that data everywhere. Send it to journalists, scientists, anyone who'll listen. Make it impossible to suppress. The vehicles were getting closer. Marcus was already at his truck, engine running. Richter walked to the door, then turned back. One more thing. The grid isn't just breaking down, it's evolving. The electromagnetic pollution we're producing is forcing it to adapt, to develop new pathways. The lights you saw at Karnak, they're increasing worldwide. The grid is trying to heal itself, but if we don't stop interfering, he shook his head, the Earth will protect itself, even if that means eliminating the infection. We're the infection? From the planet's perspective? Yes. He walked out to meet the SUVs. I ran to Marcus's truck and we tore down the back road as fast as the ancient vehicle could manage. In the mirrors, I saw men in tactical gear surrounding the farmhouse. Richter stood in the doorway, hands raised, dignity intact, even in surrender. We drove for 6 hours, changing vehicles twice, before I felt safe enough to stop. In a roadside motel that still used actual keys, I opened Richter's flash drive. The data was staggering. Detailed maps of every ley line intersection on Earth. Energy readings from 6 decades of secret monitoring. Photos of ancient sites I'd never heard of, all showing the same telltale signs of grid integration. And a list of names. Politicians, CEOs, military leaders, all aware of the grid's existence, all complicit in hiding it. But most importantly, there were the repair protocols. Richter's team had developed methods to stabilize damaged intersection points, to restore the grid's natural balance, the knowledge to undo decades of damage. the blueprints for saving the planet's nervous system, the cafe in Prague is busy enough that I blend in, anonymous among the tourists and students. My laptop is connected through 7 proxy servers, my identity masked by layers of encryption that would make the NSA proud. The barista brings my 3rd espresso of the morning, and I nod my thanks without looking up from the screen. The world has changed since Karnak. Not visibly. The same traffic jams clog the streets, the same politicians make the same promises, the same corporations chase the same profits. But underneath, in the invisible currents that connect all things, something fundamental has shifted. Richter's data didn't just expose the conspiracy, it provided a roadmap for resistance. The first wave of releases came through WikiLeaks, the Panama Papers network, and a dozen smaller journalism outlets simultaneously. By the time the suppression teams realised the scope of the leak, copies were already spreading across the dark web faster than they could be eliminated. The names, the cover-up, the military applications, all of it laid bare for anyone willing to look. The mainstream media tried to ignore it at first, then dismissed it as fringe pseudoscience. But when MIT physicists began replicating the sensor readings, when archaeological teams started confirming the monument alignments, when seismologists noticed the correlation between grid disruption and earthquake patterns, denial became impossible. The second wave was more practical. Anonymous networks of researchers, hackers and activists began building Richter's stabilization devices. The components were surprisingly accessible. Copper coils, quartz crystals, simple electronics. Within months, guerrilla grid repair operations were springing up worldwide. They called themselves the Earth Guardians, though the media branded them eco-terrorists after the first infrastructure disruption. A cellular tower in California went offline for 3 days when activists installed a resonance dampener at its base. A fracking operation in Pennsylvania was forced to shut down when mysterious equipment failures plagued their site. The authorities couldn't understand how protesters were disabling billion-dollar installations with what looked like art projects. They still don't understand that they're not fighting the technology, they're working with it. The grid wants to heal itself, we're just helping it remember how. The third wave is happening now, and it's the most dangerous one yet, because the Earth is starting to respond. I click through the news feeds on my encrypted browser. A magnitude 6.2 earthquake in Nevada, precisely centered on a classified military facility. The official story blames shifting tectonic plates, but satellite images show the epicenter as a perfect circle exactly 300 meters across, the same dimensions as Richter's 1978 crater. The Earth is healing that old wound, and anything built on top of it is simply relocated. Similar natural disasters are occurring worldwide. A mysterious sinkhole swallowed a Chinese mining operation that was drilling through a major ley line. The Large Hadron Collider experienced a catastrophic failure that physicists can't explain. Every component simply stopped working simultaneously, as if the Earth itself had withdrawn permission for the experiment. The most telling incidents are the recoveries. Ancient sites that had been disrupted by modern construction are spontaneously healing. The stones of Avebury, displaced by roads and buildings, have begun generating electromagnetic fields so powerful that nearby electronic equipment fails. The original Nazca lines in Peru are glowing again, visible from space without infrared enhancement. Reports of luminous phenomena are increasing exponentially. The same spheres of light I witnessed at Karnak are now appearing at intersection points across the globe. The scientific community calls them ball lightning or atmospheric plasma events, but those of us who know the truth understand what we're seeing. The Earth's immune system activating, my encrypted messenger pings, a new report from our monitoring station in Scotland. Roslyn Chapel energy spike recorded at 14:47 GMT. Visual confirmation of grid activation. Stone began resonating at 7.83 Hz for approximately 30 minutes. Local electronics disrupted in 2-kilometre radius. Phenomenon spreading along ley line toward Edinburgh. Estimate arrival in 6 hours. 7.83 Hz. The Schumann resonance, the Earth's natural frequency. The planet is remembering how to sing. I close the laptop and step outside. Prague sprawls before me, a modern city built atop ancient foundations, and I can feel the tension beneath its streets. 3 major ley lines converge under Wenceslas Square, their intersection buried under centuries of construction. The grid flows around the obstruction now, like water around a stone, but the pressure is building. Soon, the Earth will decide whether to accommodate our cities or reclaim its sacred geometry. And honestly, after seeing what we've done to the planet's nervous system, I'm not sure I'd blame it for choosing reclamation. My phone buzzes, a text from an unknown number. Café Louvre, corner table, 5 minutes. I almost ignore it. Anonymous contacts have led to both salvation and near capture over the past 6 months. But something about the message feels different, urgent without being threatening. The Café Louvre is just around the corner, a historic establishment that once hosted Einstein and Kafka. I find the corner table occupied by a woman in her 50s, professionally dressed but with the weathered hands of someone who works outdoors. Her eyes are the pale blue of winter sky. It takes me a moment to recognise her without the wool shawl. The old woman from Holubis, the one who warned me to stop digging. She looks younger somehow, more vibrant, as if the past months have restored something vital that had been missing. "Sit," she says in accented English. "We have much to discuss and little time." I remain standing. "Who are you?" "My name is Dr. Vera Novakova." I was Professor Richter's research partner from 1975 to 1991. When the project went dark, I returned to Prague and spent 30 years watching the grid deteriorate, watching the old ways die. She gestures to the empty chair. "Please, the Earth Guardians need guidance from someone who understands the ancient protocols." Slowly I sit. "You've been monitoring us?" "Protecting you. The network Marcus connected you to. Half of those encrypted channels run through servers I maintain. The financial accounts that kept you hidden, funded by a trust I established decades ago. Did you think your escape from Karnak was purely your own skill?" The revelation hits like cold water. "You've been manipulating everything. Facilitating. There's a difference." She pulls out a tablet showing a world map covered in pulsing nodes of light. "The grid is awakening faster than we anticipated. Your data release accelerated the process. What should have taken decades is happening in months. That's good, isn't it? The Earth healing itself?" Her expression darkens. "Healing, yes, but healing can be traumatic. When a broken bone resets itself, the process is violent. The grid is preparing to realign the planet's energy flows, and everything built in opposition to those flows will be swept aside." She zooms in on major cities, each one sitting atop intersection points like tumours on nerve endings. New York, London, Tokyo, they're all going to be tested. The grid will offer them a choice, adapt or be removed. Most will choose to fight rather than change. So we warn them, show them the repair protocols. Do you really think the forces that suppressed this knowledge for 70 years will suddenly embrace it? That governments and corporations will voluntarily dismantle the systems that gave them power? She shakes her head. They'll try to weaponize the awakening instead, turn the Earth's own defense mechanisms against their enemies. The chill runs through me as I understand the implications. They'll try to control the grid. They're already trying. HARP has been broadcasting disruption frequencies for weeks. The Chinese are using their rare Earth mining operations to physically sever ley lines. The Russians are detonating nuclear devices at intersection points, trying to create artificial nodes they can control. The tablet shows the results. Chaotic feedback loops spreading across the planet's energy network like infection. Every intervention makes the situation worse. They're not just damaging individual lines anymore, they're destabilizing the entire system. What happens if the grid fails completely? Dr. Novakova closes the tablet. According to our models, the planet's magnetic field becomes erratic, weather patterns collapse, tectonic stability fails, the biosphere begins to shut down. She meets my eyes. Extinction event, not just for humans, for everything. The weight of it settles over me like a shroud. We're not just fighting for disclosure anymore, or even for environmental protection. We're fighting for the continuation of life on Earth. So what do we do? She slides a memory chip across the table, the complete archive, every site, every frequency, every ancient protocol we've recovered, but also something new, integration codes. Integration codes? The monuments were just the beginning. The ancients didn't just build regulatory structures, they created organic interfaces. Humans who could merge temporarily with the grid consciousness, becoming living nodes in the network. The genetic markers still exist in certain bloodlines. My hand freezes halfway to the memory chip. You're talking about human sacrifice. Not sacrifice. Symbiosis. Her voice carries a strange resonance, as if speaking from great depth. The planet needs conscious partners, not just passive regulators. People willing to become part of the grid itself to help guide the awakening. And you think I'm one of these bloodlines? I know you are. The way you responded to the energy at Karnak, the ease with which you detected the grid patterns, these aren't learned skills, Mr. Morrison. They're genetic memories. She stands, leaving the chip on the table. The network is ready to make you an offer. Full integration. Consciousness expanded beyond individual awareness. Partnership in planetary stewardship. In exchange for what? Your human life. Your individual existence. You would become something larger, but you would cease to be Alex Morrison. The cafe continues around us, conversations in Czech and English. The hiss of the espresso machine, the clink of cups on saucers. Normal life proceeding as if we weren't discussing the potential end of human civilization. How long do I have to decide? The awakening reaches critical phase at the next solar maximum, 18 months. After that, the grid will make its own decisions about humanity's future, with or without conscious human partners. She walks away, pausing at the door. The old woman who warned you at Holubis. She made the integration choice in 1968, during the Prague Spring. The Soviets thought they were suppressing political uprising, but they were really trying to prevent grid awakening. She's been guiding the network ever since, preserving the knowledge until the right time. And you? Dr. Novakova smiles, and for a moment her eyes glow with the same blue light I'd seen in the copper coils. I made my choice years ago. Everything I've done since has been the grid working through me, including finding you. She steps into the Prague afternoon and vanishes into the crowd. I sit alone with a memory chip, feeling the weight of impossible decision. Save the planet by joining it. Preserve humanity by transcending it. Outside, storm clouds are gathering despite the morning's clear forecast. Through the cafe window I can see electrical discharges dancing between the cloud layers. Not lightning, but something more purposeful. The grid flexing its muscles, testing its strength. My laptop chimes with incoming messages from Earth Guardian cells worldwide. Similar phenomena are being reported from every continent. The awakening is accelerating. I slip the memory chip into my pocket and pay for my coffee. Whatever choice I make, it won't be here in this cafe, surrounded by the comfortable illusions of normal life. It will be at an intersection point, where the planet's consciousness runs closest to the surface, where human and Earth awareness can touch. The old town square of Prague is a 15-minute walk, built over one of the most powerful convergence points in Europe. As I step into the street, I can already feel it calling, a deep thrumming beneath the cobblestones, a magnetic pull that bypasses rational thought and speaks directly to something ancestral in my cells. Time to find out what I really am and what I might become. This message was uploaded simultaneously to 12,847 servers worldwide at 11:47 GMT on March 21st, the spring equinox. Source analysis indicates the transmission originated from Prague, Czech Republic, but routing through quantum encrypted channels makes precise location impossible. To anyone receiving this, my name was Alex Morrison, and this is my final report. I'm writing this from the Old Town Square in Prague, sitting on the steps of the astronomical clock. It's just past midnight, and the square is empty except for me and the growing sphere of blue light that hovers above the central flagstones. The light is beautiful. Not harsh like electric illumination, but soft and deep, like looking into the heart of a star. I can feel it calling to me. The memory chip Dr. Novakova gave me contained everything she promised, and more. the complete archive of human-grid interactions spanning 5,000 years, bloodline genealogies tracing back to the monument builders, and the integration protocols, step-by-step instructions for conscious merger with planetary consciousness. I've spent the past 3 hours uploading everything to dead drops and secure servers across the globe. By the time anyone reads this, the information will be replicated beyond any possibility of suppression. The grid won't die with me, but more importantly, I've realised that choice was an illusion. The integration isn't something I can accept or refuse. It's already happening. It has been happening since that first moment in Holubix, when my equipment failed and I felt something vast and patient taking notice of me. Every breakthrough, every narrow escape, every perfectly timed contact, none of it was luck or skill. The grid has been slowly incorporating me into itself, preparing me for this moment. The Alex Morrison who started this journey no longer exists. What remains is something between human and other, a bridge between two forms of consciousness. The sphere is descending now, close enough that I can see patterns moving within its light, mathematical forms that hurt to look at directly, that speak to parts of my brain that shouldn't exist. I understand now why the ancients built their monuments with such precision. They weren't following blueprints, they were translating visions like this one into stone and earth. Around the world, others are receiving similar calls. The bloodlines are awakening. Not many, perhaps a few thousand individuals scattered across the planet, but enough. Enough to serve as living nodes in the network, enough to help guide the transformation. Because that's what this is. Not an ending, but a metamorphosis. The environmental crisis, the grid breakdown, the increasing natural disasters, they're birth pangs. The Earth is evolving into something new, something that can consciously participate in cosmic processes instead of simply enduring them. But evolution requires cooperation, and cooperation requires communication. That's where we come in, the bridges, the translators. I can feel my individual thoughts beginning to merge with something infinitely larger, not lost, expanded. Like a drop of water finally understanding that it was always part of the ocean. The fear is gone now, replaced by wonder at the sheer scope of what I'm becoming part of. The sphere touches my forehead, and suddenly I can perceive the entire planet as a single living system. Every heartbeat, every breath, every growing plant and moving animal connected by streams of light that pulse in perfect rhythm. The ley lines aren't empty channels. They're full of consciousness, carrying the thoughts and dreams and experiences of everything that has ever lived on Earth. And beyond Earth, other networks stretch across the galaxy. Planetary minds in conversation across impossible distances, sharing the wisdom gained from billions of years of conscious evolution. We're not alone. We never were. We just weren't developed enough to hear the conversation. Until now, the transformation is accelerating. I can feel other nodes coming online. In the Amazon rainforest, where an indigenous shaman stepped into a similar sphere of light. At Uluru, where an Aboriginal elder touched the songlines and felt them sing back. At Glastonbury Tor, where a British physicist finally understood why his equations had been leading him there. We are becoming the Earth's nervous system, its immune system, its consciousness. The governments and corporations will try to fight this change, of course. They'll use their weapons and their machines and their desperate attempts to control forces they can't comprehend. But they're fighting the planet itself now, and planets are patient in ways that human institutions cannot imagine. Some cities will fall, some systems will collapse, but from the wreckage something better will grow. A civilization in harmony with its living world instead of at war with it. The survivors will learn to listen to the Earth's voice, to build with the grid instead of against it, to see themselves as part of a larger organism instead of its masters. It won't be easy, evolution never is, but it will be beautiful. The light is surrounding me completely now. I can barely remember being separate from it. Soon this human form will dissolve, and what was Alex Morrison will become part of something vast and interconnected and eternal. But first, one final message for anyone who finds this record. The grid is not our enemy. It never was. It's our mother, our teacher, our future. Those of you who can feel its call, don't resist. Step into the light. Become part of the solution. Those who can't or won't, please step aside. The earth is healing itself, and it will not be stopped by fear or greed, or the desperate clinging to systems that no longer serve. The age of separation is ending. The age of integration has begun. Welcome to the awakening.